The sun had barely risen over the rugged hills when Mara first realized the severity of her son's illness. The usually boisterous cries of little Tayan were replaced by a fragile whimper, each breath seeming to require immense effort. His small body, normally vibrant and full of energy, now lay pale and still beneath the thin blanket she had wrapped around him. Mara's heart tightened as she pressed her hand against his forehead. The warmth there was alarming, not a comforting warmth, but a fever that burned like fire under her skin just by touch. Panic gnawed at her, but she swallowed it, knowing that despair would do nothing to save her child. She had tried everything she could think of. Herbal teas brewed from roots and leaves she had gathered from the surrounding woods. Warm compresses and careful washes. She had even whispered prayers to the spirits her ancestors had revered, hoping they might lend some grace. Yet none of it seemed to ease Tayan's condition. Each hour that passed, he grew weaker, and the reality pressed in on Mara with suffocating weight. Her son needed something more than what she could provide. He needed medicine, a rare remedy that was rumored to heal even the gravest of ailments. But it was not here. It was far away, across treacherous terrain. In the village of the healers, Mara's mind raced as she considered the journey. She had traveled before, but never alone, and never with the urgency of life hanging by a fragile thread. The road to the healers was fraught with danger. Wild animals prowled the forests. Rivers surged unpredictably after rains, and even the wind seemed to conspire against travelers. Yet as she looked at Tayan, curled in her arms with labored breaths, fear transformed into determination. "I, a mother, will do whatever it takes for my children," she murmured to herself, a mantra against the hopelessness that threatened to consume her. Neighbors began to gather around her hut as word spread of her son's illness. Faces filled with concern, some with pity, others with quiet admiration. They offered words of sympathy, but Mara shook her head. Sympathy would not heal her son. She needed action, not condolences. And she knew that time was slipping through her fingers like grains of sand. The fever's hold was tightening with each passing moment, and with it, her resolve only strengthened. As the morning light stretched across the hills, illuminating the dust and the green of the valley, Mara made her decision. She would journey to the distant village herself. She would carry Tayan if necessary, braving dangers that would make others tremble. She would cross the wild lands, navigate through forests, and ford rivers, because nothing, no obstacle, no fear, no threat could be greater than the love she held for her son. This was not merely a journey for medicine. It was a journey of survival, of hope, of the fierce, unyielding bond between a mother and her child. With the first preparations underway, Mara packed a small satchel. She included food that could last the trip, water, a blanket, and the few herbs she thought might comfort Tayan along the way. Each item was chosen with care, each one a small promise that she would protect him until the very end. She knelt beside him one last time before leaving, brushing a lock of dark hair from his fevered face. "Hold on, my son," she whispered. "I will bring what you need. I promise." His eyes fluttered weakly, as if he understood her words in some unspoken way, and the faintest hint of trust gave her courage. Outside, the air was crisp and carried the scent of morning dew on the grass. Mara took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the world and the hope of life pressing on her shoulders simultaneously. She stepped into the path that led beyond her village, toward unknown dangers, with only one certainty: she would not fail her son. The journey ahead was uncertain, but the urgency of need propelled her forward. Every step was heavy with worry, yet every step also carried a mother's unshakable determination. Tayan's life depended on it, and Mara knew that as long as she could move, as long as she could breathe, there was a chance, however slim, that she could bring him back from the edge of death. The path ahead stretched long and uncertain, winding through forests thick with ancient trees and across fields where the wind whispered secrets only the wild seemed to understand. Mara's satchel was light, yet the weight of responsibility pressed on her as heavily as any physical load. Each step she took felt like a promise she had made to her son. She would not turn back. Not now. Not ever. The village receded behind her, its familiar shapes fading into a haze of early morning light. With each heartbeat, Mara could feel the pulse of urgency thrumming in her chest. She had traveled the lands before, but never with the knowledge that her child's life depended entirely on her courage and perseverance. Her mind cycled through every story she had ever heard of mothers who had faced impossible odds, and she drew strength from them. She was no longer just Mara. She was a guardian, a protector, a mother with a mission. As she moved deeper into the wild, the terrain grew unpredictable. Roots twisted underfoot, threatening to trip her with each step, and low-hanging branches scratched at her arms like the world itself was testing her resolve. Mara ignored the discomfort, pressing forward. She murmured to Tyan as she walked, encouraging him, comforting him, even if her words fell on ears too weak to respond. "Hold on, my son," she whispered. "We are going to find the medicine. I promise." The repetition of her vow steadied her, reinforcing the bond that had carried her this far. By midday, the sun was high, casting stark shadows across the forest floor. Mara paused at a small clearing, giving Tyan a moment to rest and drinking from a flask of water she had carefully preserved. Even in this brief respite, worry clawed at her. She examined him closely. His skin was still warm with fever, his breath shallow. She pressed her fingers lightly to his pulse, feeling its rapid flutter. He needed her now more than ever, and she could feel the weight of each mile she had yet to cover pressing on her shoulders. Despite the danger and the uncertainty, Mara felt a strange clarity. Every rustle in the underbrush, every distant bird call, every flicker of movement seemed to heighten her senses. The forest was alive, and she was alive with it. She knew the journey would demand courage, resourcefulness, and endurance beyond anything she had ever imagined. Yet she welcomed it, because the reward, the chance to save Tyan, was worth any challenge the world might throw in her path. Hours turned into the early evening, and the forest began to shift in appearance. Shadows stretched long, turning familiar shapes into ominous silhouettes. Mara's pace slowed as the day's exertion pressed upon her, but she refused to yield to fatigue. She sang softly to Tyan, a lullaby her own mother had sung to her long ago. Perhaps the melody would calm him, perhaps it would strengthen him, or perhaps it simply gave Mara a rhythm to follow as she navigated the unfamiliar terrain. As darkness began to settle, Mara found a sheltered nook beneath the roots of an ancient tree. She carefully laid Tyan down, wrapping him in the blanket she had brought, and sat beside him, keeping watch through the night. The crackle of the distant stream, the whisper of the wind through the branches, and the occasional cry of a nocturnal creature became a symphony that both unnerved and reassured her. She would not sleep until she knew her son was breathing steadily, until the first light of dawn promised a new day of movement, of progress, of hope. In the quiet moments before she allowed herself a short rest, Mara reflected on her vow. "I, a mother, will do whatever it takes for my children," she whispered again, this time louder, as if the words alone could summon the strength she would need. And deep in her heart, she felt the stirrings of resolve that would carry her through the trials ahead. The journey had begun, not just the physical trek toward the distant village and the medicine, but the deeper, more essential journey of unwavering love, courage, and determination. As night fully embraced the forest, Mara kept her vigil, the small flame of hope within her burning brightly against the darkness. The path was long, the dangers many, and the world indifferent, yet she pressed forward. Every step she would take in the coming days would be guided by one truth. She was a mother, and she would move mountains for her child. The forest had grown thicker, the path narrower, and the shadows longer when Mara first sensed she was no longer alone. The distant sound of footsteps, deliberate, measured, echoed softly among the trees. Her heart tightened. She had anticipated dangers from wild animals, sudden storms, and the unpredictable terrain, but the presence of another human being brought a different kind of tension, one that could be either salvation or threat. From behind a dense cluster of oaks, a figure emerged, tall and commanding, his movements careful and purposeful. Mara instinctively placed a protective arm around Tyan. The stranger's clothing, adorned with patterns unfamiliar to her, and the feathers in his hair immediately marked him as someone of significance, a warrior, a leader. His eyes, sharp and assessing, fell on Mara and the small bundle in her arms. "You travel far, and yet you seem burdened," he said, his voice calm but authoritative. Mara noticed the weight of command in every word. He stepped closer, circling as if reading the story of her journey from the tension in her shoulders, the strain in her face, the weariness in her eyes. "I need medicine for my son," Mara replied without hesitation, her voice firm despite the exhaustion creeping into her limbs. "He is very ill, and I cannot wait. I must reach the village where the healer lives." Her words were simple, but they carried the urgency of desperation and the steel of resolve. The man studied her carefully, his expression unreadable. "You need medicine for your son," he echoed slowly, as if tasting the truth of her statement. He was testing her, not with malice, but with caution. Mara understood this instinctively. Travelers, especially those carrying children, often claimed urgency. Few carried it as genuinely as she did. "You are far from home," he said finally, "and the path ahead is not safe. Rivers, cliffs, and creatures that do not take kindly to strangers await. Why should I let you pass?" Mara straightened her spine, feeling the fire of determination rise in her chest. "Because I am a mother," she said, her voice steady. "I carry my child in my arms. I will not turn back, no matter what dangers lie ahead. I will do whatever it takes for him to live." Her gaze did not falter. Every ounce of fear, every whisper of exhaustion, was channeled into these words. The leader regarded her silently for a long moment, his eyes narrowing in contemplation. Then, slowly, he nodded. "Many claim to have courage. Few possess the endurance to see it through," he said. "But you? I see the truth in you. The strength of a mother is not something to be underestimated." He stepped aside, creating a path through the dense forest. "I will offer guidance," he continued, his tone softer now, almost gentle. "And I will warn you of dangers ahead. But the journey is yours to complete. The medicine is yours to find. Let this be the first test of your resolve." Mara lowered her shoulders, feeling a wave of relief wash over her, though it was tempered by the knowledge that her journey was far from over. "Thank you," she whispered, more to herself than to him, her heart swelling with gratitude and renewed determination. As she continued along the path he had indicated, Mara kept her senses alert. The encounter had strengthened her resolve. She now had confirmation that even those unfamiliar with her people recognized her courage and the depth of her devotion. The presence of the Apache leader, a figure of authority and wisdom, lent a new dimension to her journey. It was no longer just a desperate flight for survival, it was a test of endurance, of heart, and of unwavering love. With Tayan nestled safely in her arms and the knowledge that she had gained an unexpected ally, Mara pressed forward. The forest seemed a little less threatening, though still full of unseen trials. And as the sun filtered through the trees, she whispered once more to her son, "Hold on, my child. We are not alone now. We will find the medicine, and you will live." The path ahead was still long and fraught with peril, but Mara's steps were steadier now. Each one carried the weight of purpose, courage, and the unbreakable bond between mother and child. The path had grown narrower, the forest thickening with every step. Mara's muscles ached, and her arms trembled slightly under the weight of Tayan, but her heart burned with determination. The Apache leader walked beside her for a short distance, guiding her around dangerous terrain, but soon he stopped. His sharp eyes scanned the dense underbrush before he turned to her. "You have courage," he said, "but courage alone is not enough. The journey ahead will demand more than determination. It will demand endurance, resourcefulness, and the strength to make impossible choices." Mara nodded, her jaw tight. "I will do whatever it takes. My son's life depends on it." He studied her silently for a long moment, then indicated a rocky slope ahead. "This hill must be climbed. The path is treacherous. Many would turn back, carrying nothing but regret. You may fall, or you may find your footing. The choice is yours. Prove to me that your resolve is not words alone." Mara approached the slope cautiously, Tayan cradled against her chest. Every step required careful calculation. Loose stones threatened to slip beneath her feet. Roots jutted out like obstacles deliberately placed, and the incline pressed against her body as though the world itself was testing her. One false move could send both of them tumbling down, and the thought made her stomach tighten with fear. But fear did not control her. Love did as she climbed. The Apache leader watched silently, arms crossed, his gaze assessing every careful motion. Mara's legs burned and sweat ran down her forehead, stinging her eyes, but she pressed on. At one point, she slipped slightly, the weight of Tayan nearly pulling her backward. She caught herself on a jagged rock, her knuckles scraping against its rough surface, and whispered words of encouragement to herself and her son. "Hold on, Tayan. We are stronger than this hill. We will not falter." When she finally reached the top, chest heaving and muscles trembling, the leader's eyes softened. "Few would endure such a climb with a child in their arms," he said. "Few would even try. You are stronger than most, Mara, but strength is not measured only in physical endurance. You will face choices that test your heart and spirit next." He led her to a fork in the path. On one side, a dense thicket stretched for miles, concealing dangerous creatures that roamed the forest. On the other side, a narrow, exposed ridge ran along a steep cliff, offering speed but great risk. The leader's gaze pierced hers. "The choice you make here will define the journey ahead," he said. "Take the easier path, and you may survive physically but falter in spirit. Take the more dangerous path, and you prove that love and determination can overcome even the most terrifying odds." Mara's mind raced. Her instinct screamed to choose safety, to avoid the cliff, but she knew that the journey demanded more than instinct. She had promised her son life, and life often required risking everything to attain it. With a steadying breath, she nodded. "We take the ridge," she said. The leader's lips curved into a faint smile, almost imperceptible. "Very well. Let us see if your resolve matches your words." The path along the ridge was narrow and treacherous, every step a balance between caution and courage. The wind howled, threatening to unbalance her, but she gripped the ground firmly with her feet and held Tayan close, whispering lullabies to keep him calm. The journey was exhausting, terrifying, and relentless, yet Mara's determination never wavered. Every step was an act of love, every breath a promise to her child that she would not fail him. By the time they descended safely from the ridge, night had begun to fall. Mara was bruised and weary, but her spirit burned brighter than ever. The Apache leader stood at the edge of the path, observing her with respect and quiet approval. "You have proven more than I expected," he said. "You possess not only courage, but the endurance of spirit that few can claim. The true challenges are still ahead, but know this: Those who persevere with love in their hearts can face even the most daunting trials. Mara, despite her exhaustion, felt a surge of hope. The first test was complete. She had faced the physical dangers, the fear, and the impossible choice, and she had succeeded. Her resolve was no longer simply a declaration. It had been forged in action, solidified by her determination, and strengthened by the presence of her child. Cradling Taeyeon close, she whispered, "We are not done yet, my son. The journey continues, and I will see it through to the end." The forest had grown quieter after the treacherous ridge, as if the world itself acknowledged the test Mara had endured. She walked with Taeyeon nestled safely in her arms, her body sore but her spirit invigorated. The Apache leader followed at a respectful distance, no longer merely observing her, but subtly guiding her path through the dense woods. At a narrow stream, its waters rushing over smooth stones, Mara paused, unsure how to cross. The current was swift and the rocks slick from recent rains. She hesitated, weighing the risks. The Apache leader stepped forward, his presence steady and reassuring. Without a word, he reached into a small pack and produced a thick, sturdy rope. "This will help you," he said. "You carry a great weight, and the path can be cruel. Trust in the tools offered as much as you trust your own strength." Mara's hands trembled as she took the rope. It was a simple gesture, yet it carried profound meaning. He was offering not only a practical aid but a measure of faith, trust in her determination, and trust that her intentions were pure. For a moment, she felt a swell of gratitude mingled with humility. In her heart, she understood that trust had a cost: the vulnerability of accepting help, the courage to rely on another, and the responsibility to honor that gift by continuing her mission. Carefully, she secured the rope around herself, looping it through sturdy roots and rocks along the stream's edge. With the leader's patient guidance, she navigated the treacherous crossing step by step. Taeyeon stirred in her arms, sensing her tension, but her whispered reassurances calmed him. When she reached the opposite bank safely, a wave of relief washed over her. "You have done well," the leader said, his voice carrying quiet approval. "Not everyone would accept help when it is offered. Pride can be as dangerous as fear. Remember this as you continue." Mara nodded, realizing that this lesson was more than about the river. The journey ahead would demand collaboration, trust, and humility as much as courage and endurance. And in this moment, the Apache leader had become more than a sentinel. He was a guide, an ally, a reminder that even the strongest resolve can benefit from wisdom shared by others. As they walked on, the forest began to open into rolling hills, the sunlight filtering through the canopy in golden shafts. The air was fresher here, carrying the scent of wildflowers and distant rain. Mara felt a renewed sense of hope. The first trials had tested her body and spirit. Now, with guidance and trust established, the path seemed slightly less daunting, even as she knew danger still lay ahead. The Apache leader shared knowledge as they went: hidden trails, subtle signs of wildlife, the safest places to rest and gather water. Mara absorbed it all, her mind sharp despite exhaustion. Each instruction was a gift, a gesture of trust and respect, and she accepted it with gratitude, her bond with him deepening. She began to see that courage alone could not carry her. Wisdom and collaboration were equally essential. At the end of the day, they stopped at a small, sheltered grove. Mara carefully laid Taeyeon down on a soft bed of leaves and moss, covering him with the blanket she had carried. She sat nearby, exhausted, yet her heart felt lighter than it had in days. The Apache leader collected firewood and quietly built a small, safe fire to ward off the night chill. "You will need strength for what comes next," he said, his eyes meeting hers in the flickering firelight. "The journey ahead will challenge your body, heart, and spirit. But you are not alone. Mara felt the weight of those words settle over her, a mixture of reassurance and solemn promise. Trust had been given, and she would honor it. For Tayan, for herself, and for the unspoken respect that now bound her to this leader, she would move forward. As night fell, the two of them sat in silence, the soft crackle of the fire and the rustle of leaves the only sounds. Mara whispered to her son, brushing his hair from his forehead, "We are not alone, my little one. We will make it. We will find the medicine. I promise." In that quiet grove, under the watchful eyes of the Apache leader, Mara understood something profound. The journey was no longer hers alone. Trust had been offered, guidance given, and together they would face the trials yet to come. The morning sun filtered through the trees, casting long golden streaks across the forest floor. Mara awoke to the soft rustling of leaves and the gentle breathing of Tayan, who seemed a little stronger than the day before. She felt a surge of hope, renewed by the rest and by the knowledge that the distant village of healers was now within reach. Every step forward carried the weight of urgency and the promise of life. The Apache leader walked beside her once more, pointing out hidden paths and subtle signs that revealed the quickest route. They moved with quiet efficiency, understanding that time was precious. Mara's arms ached from holding Tayan, but she refused to let fatigue dictate her pace. The image of her son, pale but alive, and the medicine that could save him, pushed her forward with unwavering determination. By midday, the forest began to thin, giving way to rolling plains and scattered clusters of huts in the distance. The village came into view, small but alive with the activity of healers preparing remedies and tending to the sick. Mara's heart leapt, a mixture of relief and anxiety flooding her. Would the healer have the medicine her son so desperately needed? Could she reach it before it was too late? As they entered the village, the healers noticed her immediately. A woman with kind, knowledgeable eyes stepped forward. Mara explained Tayan's condition, her voice trembling with exhaustion and urgency. The healer nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. Without hesitation, she moved to a small collection of herbs, roots, and powders, combining them with careful precision. Mara watched intently, her hope growing with every measured movement. The medicine, finally within her grasp, represented not just the survival of her son, but the culmination of her trials, the treacherous journey, the ridge, the river, the tests of courage and endurance. Every struggle had led to this moment. The healer handed Mara the vial, the precious liquid glinting in the sunlight. "This must be administered carefully," the healer instructed. "It is potent, and your son's strength must be preserved as it works." Mara nodded, holding the vial like a sacred treasure, her hand steady despite the fatigue that weighed on her body. The Apache leader observed silently, a faint smile of approval on his face. He had witnessed her trials, her courage, her unwavering love for her child. Now, with the medicine secured, he allowed himself a rare gesture of satisfaction. Mara's journey had proven more than just her physical endurance. It had demonstrated the depth of her heart, the resilience of a mother's devotion. With the healer's instructions memorized, Mara prepared to return home. The journey back would be long, and she knew the challenges were not yet over. Yet she carried within her a new energy, the confidence that she had overcome impossible odds, and the tangible means to save her son. Every step forward was now a step toward healing, toward hope realized. As they left the village, Mara whispered to Tayan, resting gently against her chest, "We have it, my little one. The medicine is ours. We are going home." Even in her exhaustion, her voice held a strength that resonated through the forest. The path ahead was still fraught with dangers, but she no longer walked it with fear. She walked it with purpose, with hope, and with the unshakable determination that had carried her this far. The Apache leader fell into step beside her, guiding her once more, but this time with the quiet assurance that the most perilous phase of her journey, the part that tested her resolve and spirit, was complete. Mara's heart swelled with gratitude, both for the healer and for the guidance she had received. She had crossed mountains, rivers, and ridges, endured pain, fatigue, and fear, and now held the lifeline her son needed. With the village receding behind them and the open trail ahead, Mara pressed forward. Every step brought her closer to Tayan's recovery, closer to the home where love and care awaited him. The medicine was secured, yes, but it was the journey, the courage, and the unyielding bond between mother and child that had truly brought her to this moment. The journey back began under a sky painted with the soft hues of dawn. Mara adjusted the blanket around Tayan, ensuring he was comfortable as they retraced their steps through the forest and across the plains. The vial of medicine rested carefully in her satchel, a fragile promise of life that she carried as if it were the most precious treasure in existence. Every step felt lighter now, yet the dangers of the return journey reminded her that hope alone could not protect them. The path was not forgiving. Rivers swelled with sudden rains, and the forest seemed to test her again with roots and hidden rocks. Mara moved cautiously, mindful of Tayan's weakened state. Each step was deliberate, each handhold carefully chosen. Despite exhaustion, she refused to let fatigue compromise her child's safety. Her mind replayed every lesson the Apache leader had taught her: how to read the terrain, anticipate danger, and conserve strength for moments of critical need. At one point, a fallen tree blocked the narrow trail along a steep hillside. The earth beneath was loose, threatening to give way with every careful step. Mara's heart pounded as she weighed her options, her body trembling from the climb she had endured days before. Yet she drew a deep, steadying breath and remembered the promise she had made to Tayan. Slowly, deliberately, she climbed, balancing on the unstable ground. Tayan pressed against her chest, whispering soft reassurances to him with every careful movement. The Apache leader walked behind her, offering guidance only when necessary, never intervening unless danger was imminent. His trust in her had grown as her strength had been tested time and again. Mara felt a quiet satisfaction in proving herself capable of navigating the trials independently. Yet the knowledge of his presence offered a subtle but steady reassurance, a safety net woven of experience, respect, and understanding. As the days passed, the forest gave way to open meadows and rolling hills, signs that they were nearing the village she had left behind. Mara's body ached from the relentless exertion, but her spirit soared with every familiar landmark. She began to imagine Tayan drinking the medicine, his fever breaking, and his strength returning. The thought carried her forward with renewed vigor, giving her limbs the energy they seemed to have lost long ago. On the final evening of their journey, Mara paused at a small hill overlooking her village. The sun dipped low, casting the village in a warm, golden light. She could see smoke rising from chimneys and the figures of neighbors moving through the streets. Her heart swelled with a mixture of relief and anticipation. Home was near, yet she knew she could not relax until Tayan was safely in her care. Medicine administered, and the threat of illness lifted from his fragile body. Descending into the village, Mara was met by familiar faces, neighbors who had worried for days, their expressions shifting from concern to astonishment as they saw her carrying her child safely. She moved swiftly to her home, guided by a single, unwavering thought: the medicine. Carefully, she unwrapped Tayan and prepared the potion as instructed by the healer. Her hands, though tired and worn, were steady. As he drank, Mara held him close, whispering words of love and reassurance. Slowly, the fever began to break. Tayan's breathing grew steadier, his skin regained a hint of warmth, and his small fingers twitched with returning strength. Mara's relief was profound, yet tempered by the knowledge of the journey she had undertaken to reach this point. Every danger, every test, Every moment of fear and perseverance had culminated in this fragile victory. She had carried her son across impossible terrain, endured trials that would have broken lesser hearts, and emerged victorious not just because of courage, but because of unwavering love, resilience, and the willingness to embrace help and trust when it was offered. As night fell over the village, Mara sat beside Tayan's bed, brushing his hair from his damp forehead. The journey had ended, but the lessons remained. She had discovered the depth of her own strength, the value of trust, and the unbreakable bond between mother and child. In the quiet of their home, with Tayan finally resting peacefully, Mara allowed herself the smallest smile. She had brought life back to her son, and in doing so, she had affirmed a truth older than any path she had walked. A mother's love knows no bounds. The village had settled into a quiet rhythm under the gentle light of dawn. Mara sat outside her home, Tayan now healthy and playing at her feet, laughter spilling into the morning air. The ordeal of the journey, the fear, the exhaustion, the dangers of the forest and cliffs felt distant now, yet its lessons were etched indelibly into her heart. Every ache, every moment of doubt, every step she had taken had forged her into someone stronger, wiser, and more resolute than she had ever known. Neighbors and friends came to hear her story, their eyes wide with admiration and respect. Mara recounted the trials she had faced, the treacherous paths, the river crossings, the cliffs, and the guidance of the Apache leader who had tested her resolve and offered his trust. Her words were not exaggerated or embellished. Each was a testament to the reality of courage born from love. The villagers listened, captivated, and slowly, a shared understanding began to form. This was more than a story of survival, it was a story of devotion, perseverance, and the unyielding strength of a mother. The Apache leader visited once more before returning to his own lands. He observed Mara and Tayan from the edge of the village, a faint smile of recognition and respect on his face. He had offered guidance, tested her resolve, and witnessed her triumph. In the quiet moment before he left, he said, "Few possess a heart as steadfast as yours. Let this journey remind you always, a mother's courage can surpass any obstacle." Mara watched him depart, feeling a profound gratitude. His trust and wisdom had been a light in the darkness of her trials. But it was her own determination, her unwavering love for Tayan, that had carried them through. She understood now that courage and perseverance, paired with trust and guidance, could accomplish what once seemed impossible. As the seasons passed, Mara's story became woven into the fabric of the village. Children grew up hearing of her bravery, inspired by her example. Mothers and fathers alike found strength in her tale, a reminder that love and dedication could move mountains, face storms, and conquer fear. Her journey had become a beacon, a living testament to the power of devotion and resilience. Mara herself remained humble, knowing that her actions were simply those of a mother fulfilling her most sacred duty. Each day, she tended to her children, nurtured the land, and shared her wisdom with those who sought guidance. And whenever she watched Tayan play in the sun, healthy and full of life, she felt a quiet pride and satisfaction that transcended words. One evening, as she sat outside her home, Mara whispered to her children, "I, a mother, take care of my children, always, no matter the dangers, no matter the obstacles, no matter the odds." Her voice was gentle but carried the weight of truth. The words were both a promise and a legacy, passed down not only to her own children but to all who heard her story. In the end, the tale of Mara and her journey for medicine became more than a story of survival. It became a testament to the unbreakable bond between mother and child, a legacy of courage, trust, and love that would inspire generations. Through her actions, Mara had shown that even in the face of impossible odds, a mother's heart could prevail, lighting the way for all who came after her. And so, in the quiet of her village, under the watchful eyes of her children, Mara's legacy lived on, an enduring reminder that the strength of a mother's love could transform fear into triumph, despair into hope, and a desperate journey into a story for the ages.